Now, on with a review of the final episode of OLTL. The episode starts with the character of Allison Perkins, who's supposed to be sort of a loony woman who worked with Mitch Lawrence, the messenger, back in, I guess, I don't know, late 80s, 90s, I'm not entirely sure. I didn't watch the show back then as well. But so she starts the show talking to some unknown person that we have no idea who it is. And she is talking about the story of Landview and the story of the people there. And she has a manuscript in her hand, which she begins the show by saying, you know, well, let's get to it. And you see the page that says One Life to Live by Allison Perkins. So, this was about wrapping up a lot of stories. The first story that we'll talk about is the story of Star Manning. Star and her daughter Hope arrive in Los Angeles at the apartment of her friends Langston and Marco. She comes inside, they, reunite. At a very early point, Star reveals to the two of them that Cole did not actually die as had been thought after this prison break experience that had happened. That he actually, her father Todd had helped him to fake his death and to go back to be with his family, because he had been trying to get back to see his mother and father, who were very far away. They discuss how her parents, Star's parents, did not want her to actually come to California. There is a click, knock, knock, knock on the door, and Star answers the door, and there's a man standing there who says, Miss Manning, my father, your father sent me, and you can go anywhere you want in Los Angeles or wherever, as long as you have your bodyguard with you. Star says, I do not want a bodyguard. I'm sorry you had to go through all this trouble. The man says, no, I'm not the bodyguard. I'm just an associate of your father's. This is your bodyguard. Into the doorway steps Cole, who Star is, of course, shocked to see. She pulls him inside the apartment. He and Star are reunited with Langston and Marco one last time. They talk for a minute. Star says how she thought he was with his family. Cole turns to her and says, hey, you and Hope and me, you are my family. Of course, that's if that's what you want. And Star says, that's all I've ever wanted. They kiss and embrace, and that closes their story. The next story would be Tomas and Taya. They are at John's apartment, and Taya is reunited with Tomas, who has been missing for some time. She tells him how happy she is to see him, how they discuss with John McBain how they are going to finally nail Todd for the murder of Victor Lord, which Tomas had been framed for. John calls in for a search warrant to a judge. Tomas also discovers that Blair does not actually know the real truth, that that he is alive and that he did not kill Victor. Taya confesses to him that they never told Blair what was really going on because she was starting to get close with Todd, and they were afraid that Blair would tip off Todd and Todd would make a run for it or find some way of covering his tracks further, and maybe even getting Tomas killed. So Tomas is further agitated by that. Ultimately, John McBain and Taya convince him to just settle in and calm down, that it was all about to finally be over. John finally gets the notice of the search warrant and he leaves. So that pretty much wraps up Tomas and Taya's story. Next, we see the families of Destiny and Matthew, which would be Bo and Nora, and Destiny's parents, who I'm not entirely sure what their names are, but they're all gathered together after this party. Destiny's water breaks. her OBGYN, surprisingly enough, who is also her brother's girlfriend, is there. So the baby's coming. They're about to have, Destiny's about to have the baby when Matthew arrives. He admits that he was scared about being a father. He thinks he's too young, but he found out from his brother David that the most important thing is that you take care of the people who mean the most to you, and that would be Destiny and the baby. So he is there standing by her when she finally gives birth to the baby. After all is said and done, they end up having a boy. Bo calls his son David and says, I heard you convinced Matthew to stand up for what was right, and I wanted to say it means the world to me. It's the best thing I think you've ever done for this family, and I really appreciate it. David suggests to Bo that they name the baby after him. Bo says he will ask. He tells David he will talk to him soon, and they end their phone call. Bo goes over and tells Matthew that he is not alone, and that he's got a whole big family to help take care of him and the child, the baby now. They talk about what to name the baby. Bo throws out David's suggestion. Matthew says, maybe we should name it after my brother. But not David. I'd like to name it after my other brother, Drew. For those who don't know, Drew was Bo's son who died in the line of duty as a police officer. I wish I could remember the name of the actor, because his first name was Thomas, but he was a really, really good actor. And he played a dead guy excellently. So Drew seems to be a positive choice for everyone. So the last line for Matthew is, happy birthday, Drew. Bo tells Nora he's going to go get the car so they can get Destiny and Drew to the hospital. The last lines they exchange, Bo turns to Nora and with tears in his eyes says, I love you, Red. Nora goes over to him, says, I love you, Bo Buchanan. They kiss and they stare longing at each other. And that concludes their story. Then we have Clint and Vicky, who at the very end of the previous episode had just gotten the results for a DNA test to find out whether or not their daughter Jessica is Clint's daughter biologically. For a long time it was assumed that, in some weird expectation, that Vicky gave birth to twins, but Natalie was actually Clint's biological daughter, and Jessica was the daughter of Mitchell Lawrence, the messenger. But this DNA tests come, and they're about to open the results. They finally open them, and they're shocked at the results. Jessica and Natalie come in. Clint takes Jessica to the side and says, you know, I found out we were told by Allison Perkins last week or whatever about this situation with your biological father, and you know, I just want you to know that no matter what these test results say, that you will always be my daughter. And she says, I know that, and he says, but I'm glad to say it's official. So we find out that Jessica is actually Clint's biological daughter, and that Jessica and Natalie are true twins, and not identical, but true birth twins. Don't ask me how that happened, but anyway, so they're twins. They're all hug and are happy. Natalie goes upstairs to call Rex and tell him the good news. Jessica answers the door and finds Brody at the door, who has been in St. Anne's, which is sort of like a mental rest-away place. He tells her that he's been released, that he wants to apologize to her for all the trouble that happened, that he really cares about her, and that he will be there if she ever needs him. Let's see. She says thank you, and he says, I'm going to move on and try and help some of my buddies who are in the military. Potentially there's still some work for me. Don't ask me how he would go back in the military if he's got mental problems, but anyway, so he goes off and they say goodbye to each other. Then Clint says he's tired of wasting time in his life because his life is so short, so much has happened to them in the last year. He says, I do not want to waste any more time. With that, he goes down on one knee and proposes to Vicky, who comes to tears and says yes, and they embrace, and that is the end of their story. Then finally, Todd and Blair, played very well and very beautifully by Roger Howarth and Cassie DePaiva. They are preparing to make love when Todd pulls back and says, I can't do this. He admits he's made a lot of mistakes, and he continues to make mistakes, and he knows it's always going to tear her apart from him. She says, we've discussed that there are no guarantees of not hurting each other, but, you know, we mean the world of each other. Let's not, you know, miss this opportunity to be together. Todd wishes there were guarantees, but ultimately through the discussion, they finally fall into each other's arms and make love as they are celebrating in the afterglow. And Todd finally declares to Blair, I love you. And she says, I love you. The bedroom door is bust open. John McBain and 2 officers, I think it was, come into the room. John says, we tried to knock, but there was no answer. He says, Todd and Blair sit up in bed. John says, Todd Manning, you are under arrest for the murder of Victor Lord Jr. Victor Lord is, if you don't know, it was discovered that who people thought was Todd Manning for about 8 years turned out to be his twin brother Victor after cosmetic surgery. Go watch the old episodes if you want to know what I'm talking about, because it'd be very difficult to explain it all. But ultimately Todd came back, and Victor was killed. He was shot, and it was discovered, I guess a month or 2 ago, that Todd actually is the one who shot Victor. So he tried to frame Tomas for it, but obviously Tomas was rescued finally. So John says, you are under arrest for Todd Manning, you are under arrest for the murder of Victor Lord Jr. Todd just sort of stares at him. Blair looks at Todd. Todd starts to look at her. As these closing moments are happening of this scene, you hear Allison Perkins saying that some people will finally pay for their crimes. Just as they come in and say, you're under arrest, Todd, she says, but why ruin what happens next? And then it cuts to her in this hotel room, it seems, and she says, after all, you know things are never as they seem. And she goes to a bed, looks like she pushes a tray off, flips a tray over, and revealed, tied to the bed with a gag in his mouth, is Victor Lord Jr. And his face is the last shot of this series. So that is the end of One Life to Live. The close of the show after 43 years, and it was a pretty touching episode. I thought all in all they handled it pretty well. You know, they gave you the normal, you know, happy endings in some cases, in a lot of cases actually, the happy endings, which I think audiences finally needed after so much time. But at the end they still gave you that little cliffhanger that makes you wonder what happens next, and any good soap opera leaves you with a cliffhanger, which is what keeps people coming back over and over again. So it was a very well done episode overall. You know, I don't know if there's things that they could have done better. I really did believe they were going to bring back Victor Lord Jr. before they actually brought him back. I thought he would show up somewhere physically, you know, pop out to Taya or Blair at some point, most specifically to Taya. But they did bring him back, but they just chose to bring him back in a different way as a hostage, which was, you know, it was a good reveal, a nice surprise. I kind of knew it was going to be him at the once it got to the end there. I knew they were going to probably not bring him back any other way, but I'm still glad they did it that way. I think it was great that they had that little cliffhanger for people to just sort of wonder what happens next. I think that's what any good show does in the end, is it leaves you wondering what happens next, and it leaves it to us, the audience, to figure it out.